And the question is, which local language will be chosen for, take for example, national language. Take for example, language for education. Take for example, the issue of language for official business. Which language is going to be promoted for that? That's where the challenge is. Now, you need to determine the language that would be effective at both local and state levels. Make a decision as to which language or which languages will be used for both local use and state communication. That is, using the languages as national language, using the languages as official languages. Make a good and well-informed decision about which languages can be selected for such kind of purposes. And what criteria are you going to follow to achieve that? This determination is a task that requires thoughtful planning and is surrounded by debate and controversy. Why is it surrounded by debate? Why is it controversial? If you go back to our previous lessons, we had talked about language choice for a country is often a problem. A problem because every ethnic group would require and desire that their language has to be promoted, has to be elevated. Because of that, controversy arises. So we have to be very, very careful when we are talking about such kind of things. Then let's look at acquisition planning and language choices in multilingual situations. Some nations prefer instruction only in the official language. That is some countries, some nations. Now, a single language is chosen for instruction because it is said to support national unity and homogeneity. That is why some countries would choose only one language. So a country might have 60 ethnic groups reflecting 60 different languages. But at the end of the day, the country will select only one language. Select one language for national use, for official use. Why? It's because this encourages or supports national unity and homogeneity. In short, this supports oneness. Some nations prefer different languages for instruction in schools in order to help students learn better by giving them diverse perspectives. This is an idea that is arising from the claim that cognitive development of the learners is achieved better through their native languages. And that is why others believe in using as many languages as possible. But as we had reflected on this area on in the other chapters, such an approach is not easy to achieve, simply because it becomes very expensive. Because if the languages are 60, it means you have to endeavor to develop 60 curriculum. If you develop 60 curriculums, that will translate into production of books and teaching and learning materials of 60 different languages, and that is economically impossible. It will become excludingly expensive and very, very difficult for people to manage. The country may not suffice in terms of the resources. Now, let's look at acquisition planning and choices in multilingualism as a continuation. In this, people aim at fostering linguistic and social diversity by encouraging teaching in several native languages. As I've already pointed out, this is not easy. It is difficult. because generally it will be very, very expensive. Think about a country or one nation training teachers who will have the potential to handle 60 languages. That will be very, very difficult. How many colleges would this nation have? That's a difficult, and that is a difficulty, and that's a challenge. In addition to the education sector, which we have been focusing on in terms of the development of skills for the implementation of the programs of teaching or handling many languages in the institutions, we have the non-governmental organizations who also play a role in language acquisition. Now, the role of non-governmental sectors or organizations is, for example, 1. The Académie Française of France. This was already alluded to in one of the chapters, that it is there to ensure that French is properly cultivated as a language and be taught as a subject. That is very, very important. And then there is another institution or organization or sector in Spain. This is the Real Academia Española, the Real Academia Española of Spain. This is also having the same role as the Académie Française of France. Then we have Bakita for Swahili in Tanzania. And we have the Center for Languages or Center for Language Studies, CLS, in Malawi at Chansa College in Zomba. All these sectors are focusing on assisting in the development and teaching of these languages, of the respective languages in these countries. And this is also very, very important. Let's look at an example on acquisition planning. A typical example is drawn from Ireland. You see, before 1922, a movement to restore Irish language as the nation's language started in Ireland, simply because Ireland was a colony of Britain. And this Ireland, as a country, became independent from Britain in 1922. This language, Irish, was for developing nationalism and identity. That is, the idea was, if the country, Ireland, has become independent, then what will be the language that will be the unifying factor for the natives of Ireland? It was found their principal language was Irish. So they wanted to develop Irish through schools, through organizations, to ensure that the language becomes a unifying factor. That was in the spirit of developing nationalism and then using the language as a source of identity. Irish language had always competed with English and Scottish dialects or languages in Ireland, which means in Ireland there were three principal languages: Irish, competing with English, and competing with Scottish. Both English and Scottish were languages from their colonial masters, Great Britain. After the Irish War for independence from Britain, the Irish movement started gaining momentum. So, an organization, the Irish Movement, had been started. Soon after independence, this forum, Irish Movement, started gaining power, gaining momentum to introduce Irish as a national language. So, the Gaelic League was created to promote the acquisition of Irish language in schools. That is, the push or the thrust for introducing Irish as a national language was done now through a league, a big organization, the Gaelic League. The Gaelic League. Now, this was done to promote acquisition of Irish language in schools, that is, in schools of Ireland. Now the question is, how was this done? This introduction resulted in de-Anglicizing Ireland. The technical term de-Anglicizing Ireland implies trying to pull Ireland away from English, because English is from England. So to de-Anglicize Ireland was to ensure that English is removed from Ireland and Irish language is brought in. Immediately after independence, the League, that is the Gaelic League, declared Irish language as the language of instruction for at least 1 hour in primary schools nationwide. Look at the move from the Gaelic League. They introduced Irish as a language that has to be taught or learned in schools throughout Ireland at least 1 hour in primary schools. This was the beginning, and this was the approach. Be aware that this approach was a modest one. It was not a vigilant one. Just 1 hour in primary school nationwide, while English and Scottish remained on the curriculum. Irish-speaking teachers were recruited and preparatory colleges were established to train them. Now, what this means is that the nation of Ireland realized that there was no way to introducing Irish as a language to be taught in schools without preparing the teachers who would handle such a subject, such a language subject. So that is also a very important aspect in the example. We proceed. The Anglicizing program was unfortunately and mostly left in the hands of individual schools. This is where it was unfortunate.